Hi, I'm Dr. Caroline Leaf, and welcome to my podcast, Cleaning Up the Mental Mess. And in today's podcast, I'm going to be talking about how to learn to laugh at yourself, or the importance of laughing yourself as being a parent. I'm a parent of 4, and I tell you, parenting has been made 100 times easier by learning to laugh at myself, which I wasn't very good at in the beginning because I was way too serious about things, but it has helped tremendously. But before we begin, if you want to listen to my podcast ad-free, as well as have bonus content, as well as have Q&As, then you need to go and subscribe to my Patreon account. The link and the details will be in the show notes. And as I always say, this podcast is educational. It's not medical advice. If you need medical advice, please contact the appropriate medical professional. And now on to today's podcast, which is all about laughing at yourself. You know, laughing, I've done a podcast on laughing, and we know that laughter is the best medicine. We all know that. It makes us feel fantastic. It really does great things in your brain and your body. But I'm talking today specifically about laughing at yourself as a parent, because we make so many mistakes and we actually can be quite funny. And by laughing at the kind of mistakes that you may perhaps made with your kids, you can learn so much about yourself, about being a better parent, about your children. The benefits for the relational benefits of you laughing at yourself are enormous. It creates tremendous respect in your children when they see that you can actually say, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I did that. And then, laughing at yourself, because some of the things that honestly, they are hilarious and scary. Some of the belief systems that I had, all good intended. So parenting, obviously in the norm, we want the best for our kids. So our intentions are good. But our intentions don't always come out good by the way that we carry through that intention. So some of our activities that we carry out are linked to or ways that we parent, linked to our belief systems, or where we are at in our life, all based on the conditioning that we had that is coded into our brain from our own nurturing and our own belief systems and so on, and our environments that we've been in, and maybe what we've studied or experienced, and all that's coded in, that comes into the play when we make decisions about how we bring up our children. So we may have incredibly good intentions, but they don't have very good impact. And we need to acknowledge and own that impact, and as far as possible, laugh at ourselves for the mistakes that we've made. Don't be scared to say to your kids that I made a mistake. That was wrong. It hurt you. I'm sorry about that. And obviously, if it's something that you've hurt them, I'm not asking you to, laugh at that. But some of you there's things that you can think about. For example, my kids will often say, Mac and I was so strict, Max, my husband. We were so strict bringing them up about what TV they could watch, what shows they could watch. And we were very, very involved. We were too religious at that stage, and immersed in religious environments that were just, some of the philosophies and things were just not great at all. And that made me very, very strict, both of us, about what they couldn't watch. And they were like some seriously innocent, fun programs that we said they couldn't watch. And actually, they were good. They were things that they could learn from, where they were innocent. And it would have been better for us to allow them to watch them and let them experience them and explain what you're concerned about, or whatever, or control it, or watch it with them. And if there's something that you don't agree with, explain it. But my kids used to, now they remind me, that you wouldn't let me watch Superman, for example. I wouldn't let them watch Superman. Okay, so you might be saying, I don't want to laugh at myself as a parent. It's too much of a serious thing. But you really did hear right. Laughter neutralizes situations. And a neutral situation is a safe space for a child to be able to tell you the impact of something. And so, for example, some of the TV shows that I would tell my kids they couldn't watch, that I now look back and think, why did I do that? And I had something that, I think it was Bob's Sponge Pants or something. And I said, well, you can't watch that because they're rude to their parents. Meanwhile, that wasn't what the whole show was about. And there were some things that they could have learned from that. And, we think back at it now and it's actually quite funny. But the point is that the laughter at yourself, when your children bring that up, and I think, why did I think that? Neutralizes the situation. In a neutral situation, you create a safe space within which your child, even if they are whatever age, whether they're little, an adolescent, teenager, young adult, married, whatever, they feel safe to be able to talk to you about, why did we do that? What was the reason, the impact that it had on them? And you can help them resolve stuff. We know that early childhood experiences are coded into our brains and impact how we move forward. And something as innocent as stopping a child watching a certain TV show when their friends are allowed to watch it, and we don't give the reasons why, and we just say it's bad, that is confusing and codes into a child. It can be very confusing and can impact them in ways that you don't realize. And having that discussion with my kids, they would say, well, when you stopped us watching this movie or stopped us watching that movie, but then you allowed us to watch this, and it was even worse than that. It's confusing, what's going on here? And so we could then explain why, so we created a safe space. And in a safe space, you can work through adverse child experiences that have happened, that happened unintentionally, that we do to our kids. Listen, if you're a parent, you're doing stuff to your kids, whether you like it or not, we have to face that. And that's why I'm doing this podcast, because my kids are between 25 and 30. I'm still having to have these discussions with my children, and it will probably happen the rest of the time that I'm alive on this earth, that we will have situations where my kids will bring up, remember when you did this? Remember when you didn't allow us to do that? Remember when you said this? And you know what? The fact that they're saying it means that you've already created a safe space for them to feel comfortable enough to say it. And when you listen and you don't defend and get defensive, which I used to do, okay, when you actually listen and say, oh gosh, I can't believe it, I'm sorry, and laugh at yourself and say, wow, okay, that's like crazy, and I'm sorry, and let them talk about the impact, and then you can maybe explain, okay, well, that comes from this X, Y, Z. I think it comes from this, that was my upbringing, I grew up with that, etc. So we want to always create safe spaces for our children where you can have deep, meaningful discussions and build deep, meaningful relationships. You don't just want to have a relationship with your kids where you don't really get to the deep stuff and you're just dealing with the day-to-day busyness of life, because then when something does happen in their life, you haven't created a safe space for them to be able to come and talk to you about that, because you haven't connected with them in that way. So by laughing at yourself about the things they remind you of and about the mistakes that you see yourself making, oh gosh, why did I do that? And laughing at yourself, that was really a dumb thing to do. You are creating that space for deep, meaningful relationships in a very proactive way. That's why you want to do this from young with your children. And when I say proactive, that means that when they hit a situation in their life, maybe when as they enter adolescence or into turn 18 or going to college or something like that, that things happen to them, they know through you creating safe spaces at home through which laughing at yourself is one of those ways of doing that, they feel that they can come and talk to you about that. And so it doesn't escalate and explode into a major mental health crisis or something. Okay, so laughing at yourself shows that you're vulnerable. It shows vulnerability. It shows that, hey, I'm human. I don't know everything. I can make these mistakes, and it's okay to be vulnerable. So your modeling of vulnerability then enables them to recognize vulnerability is not a bad thing. Vulnerability is an opportunity to share and to grow, and to share, repair, and grow. Okay, it shows honesty. Kids they can read when you're being dishonest. So when you've made a mistake and you try and cover up with a lie because you've got to show that you're a perfect parent, which is like real baby boomers, silly nonsense parenting kind of stuff. And I'm not just categorizing. Obviously, not everyone did that, but it's this whole thing. Never show your children that you have made a mistake. I remember my mom saying that to me, and I love my mom to bits. But she would say, "Don't say sorry to your kids. Don't laugh at yourself." There's always this put on this thing that you got it all together. Please, we do not have it all together. Vulnerability, humility, honesty goes so much further in your relationship with your child. So therefore, when you show this vulnerability, when you are honest, when you allow yourself to laugh at yourself, you are modeling ways of them managing their mind. I'm currently writing a book on helping children with their mental health. And this is in there. This is information from the book, Learning to Laugh at Yourself as a Parent. Because what we need to do is we need to model for our children how we're managing our mental health, how we're managing our mistakes, how we are managing our vulnerability, how honesty is a good thing, and that it's really okay to own the impact of your mistakes. And it's not nice sometimes to see the enormous impact that maybe you have had on a child unintentionally, but it had that massive impact that maybe it didn't show up until they were old enough to actually process because they're going through their own issues. And then they go to therapy or something, or they have a discussion or something triggers, and you actually see, oh gosh, that was something that was done when that child was maybe 9 or 10. And they didn't know how to process it till this particular point in their life. So, and they come to you and talk to you at that point. It's super important to have created that safe space that they can come back and talk to you, and that you can say sorry and you can laugh and be vulnerable. So laughing instead of getting upset or defensive will form a bond of trust with your children. Laughter is an incredible bond-building kind of thing. And it's very relieving for a child for you to turn around and say, I can't believe how strict I was. I mean, one of the things I used to tell my kids is that no sport on Sunday, because that's only for church and that's ungodly to do sport on Sunday. And I don't want to offend anyone. If that's what you believe, I'm not going to offend you. But that's what I believed at that point. I mean, I'm not trying to offend you or criticize you. Everyone's entitled to their own philosophy. But that philosophy damaged my kids because my kids were horse riders and the shows were on Sunday. So there was a whole period of their life where 2 of my children could not do shows. They were great at horse riding, and that took away like a whole experience. And I feel really bad about that. I'm not staying stuck in the badness, but in the feeling of badness. But I had to own that and go through that and look at the impact and talk that through and hear their disappointment and their frustration of how that held them back. And then, laugh at myself for why did I do this in the first place? But because I have frequently tried to learn to laugh at myself, and I've got better and better over the years, and I'm kind of pretty good at it now, that created that safe space. I know I'm repeating myself, but laughing at yourself does create a bond of trust, honesty, humility, and vulnerability that your kids will come to you. You want them to come to you and talk to you. Okay, so something that I will always tell my parents when I was practicing clinically is that we need to earn our children's respect. You have to earn your child's respect. Your child loves you regardless of what you do. And, that's just how it works. But you need to earn their respect. Don't just demand their respect. You can't demand respect. And respect comes from when you are humble. When someone's humble, just think of the most humble person in your life. Someone that have you ever said this? You listen to someone and they're just filled with wisdom. I interviewed someone like this the other day. And this person is so highly qualified, so highly trained, absolutely brilliant. But the thing that struck me the most about this person was their humility. And their humility in a good sense. They were gentle, they were kind, they were vulnerable, they were humble. And it made me feel very safe. And it made us, we had an incredible discussion in the podcast interview about really deep things because of the way that person's humility came through. So, in other words, that humility, the point that I was making is that humility increased my respect of that person. I already had respect, but by the end of that conversation or that interview, my respect had tripled because of the fact that this person was so humble and so ready to listen. Laughing at ourselves actually sends the message that this is a really big one. Laughing at ourselves sends the message that it is okay to make mistakes and everything can be resolved in some way. So when you laugh at yourself, that is the message that you are sending to your little child, your adolescent, teenager, young adult, whatever, your husband, even your wife, your friend, your partner. You are sending the message that it's okay to make mistakes. You've heard me say so often on this podcast, it's okay to be a mess. And it really is, but it's not okay to stay in the mess. So laughing gives that message that it's okay to make a mess. And there's a way that we're going to resolve this. Because when you laugh at yourself, you are actually saying, okay, well, that was funny. What's the better way? So you're moving beyond just getting stuck. Whereas if you defend and you justify and you do all of that stuff, it kind of creates a bad vibe, and it creates an unsafe space where your children may not feel like they can talk to you. But by going through the pain of hearing it and maybe saying you're so sorry and maybe even crying a little bit and, trying to explain that, this is not an excuse, but this is where I think it came from and how can I help you? What do you need? And then laughing, as you get through the healing wound and so on, the laughter can then help you to neutralize that situation even more. And of course, there are those fantastic physical benefits and mental health benefits to laughing that I spoke about in one of my podcasts where I spoke about laughing. So you can go back and listen to that for all the benefits to yourself. of the amazing benefits mentally, physically, intellectually, health-wise. So a couple of things. When we laugh, we improve our immune system function, which then protects us from the challenges of toxic experiences have had. So every toxic experience that your child's had as a result of us making our mistakes, our silly decisions, our good intention decisions that were disastrous, affected their immune system. And that's just how it works. That's one of the things. So as we laugh, we are actually helping them to heal their immune system, and you are healing your immune system, because anything that creates dissension is affecting your immune system, because how you experience life is coded into your brain. And if it's a negative experience, it's going to create a damaging neuroplastic change in your brain and body, as you've heard me say so often. So the laughter helps to start undoing and rehealing the immune system. It helps balance neurochemicals, which is fantastic, because neurochemicals out of sync mean that we're not going to be functioning in our most wise state, and decision-making, creative thinking, and all those things get impacted. It also activates the brain's natural pain relievers. We have a whole internal pharmacopoeia of different chemicals that will help us manage pain, and laughter releases those. So the pain that you're going through, hurting your child, for example, unintentionally, in the pain that the child's had, the laughter can help to release those chemicals to bring healing to the situation. It helps us because it stimulates blood flow and oxygen to the brain, which then helps us have a clearer decision-making ability and think with more clarity, which I've spoken about often. And that is, there's so many other benefits. So guys, laugh at yourself. Own those mistakes, laugh at yourself instead of defending, and you will radicalize your relationship with your children. Thanks for listening to me, and I look forward to seeing you next time.